Afternoon, everybody. My name is Rich Madalino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Montgomery County government. I'm sitting in today for County Executive Mark Elrich, who unfortunately is home under the weather. So he's got to be sick if he's not willing to get on the call and talk to the press. So you can tell his voice is not doing well. So, and Dr. Bridgers, Dr. Ashford said, no, that you can't do it. And we gotta listen to our public health experts when it comes to staying healthy. If that's something that we've learned through the last several years of human experience, and of course the Elrich administration. So thank you so much again for joining us. We're going to be going over a variety of topics, but first we're going to start with a little bit of local news about flood response and safety. We currently have, as people know, we have many assets to deal with flooding and to deal with water rescues because of our responsibility to patrol the Potomac River that runs along the county. We have deployed, at the request of our colleagues at the state level, we have deployed 6 fire and rescue personnel, as well as 2 of our swift water rescue boats to Allegheny County to help with the flooding that is occurring within Maryland. We've already been, and you can see through the photos, we've been on the ground helping people, our fellow Marylanders who are dealing with this unusual flooding. We have also had some local minor flooding reported in the county as we continue to see this atmospheric river hit the mid-Atlantic with several inches of needed rainfall, but still an amount that the ground is unable to handle. So it is always important to note when there is the risk of flood that you want to turn around and don't drown. Do not drive into a flooded road. Believe it or not, it takes just a foot of water, when you think about that up against the car, a foot of water to actually sweep away a car. So if you are at all concerned, if you have a doubt, don't drive into that water. We've already seen 5 inches or more in some areas of Maryland. That's going to lead to, I'm sure, flood waters that are going to come down the Potomac River over the next few days, which is going to change conditions on the Potomac. So please stay up to date about road conditions, weather conditions, flooding, your safety on the river, especially, in a few days when you might say, hey, let's go for a walk along the river. It's a beautiful weekend. The river is going to be dealing with all that excess rain that flowed to our south and to our west that's going to funnel through the Potomac right there. So please be smart and follow along with Alert Montgomery for real-time safety updates. You can get that sent to your phone. So please be careful when it comes to flooding. And thank you to our personnel who are deployed in Western Maryland, helping our neighbors deal with the current weather conditions. And so I also now want to talk a little bit about the FY26 operating budget update. The county executive proposed a budget on March 14th. The council has been working through it and has done substantial work. We're pleased to see that they have embraced just about every dollar of spending that the county executive has proposed, whether it's for all of our services through the Montgomery County government, through the many needed additions to the Montgomery County Public Schools, or the other agencies that make up the Montgomery County Public Services. So thank you to the County Council for their hard work and the continued work they have to do over the next few days. There's lots of voting to occur, but tomorrow is the big day. The county executive was very pleased to see that the council came together to approve his approach to the school system, which was to fully fund the school system's request. So out of a $3.58 billion record request to fund our public schools for the next year, The council has embraced all but 8 million of that. So it will provide a record increase to the school system, 200 and $60 million, $268 million in county tax dollars over the last year's budget. And when added with tens of millions of state funds, more than $300 million of additional authority for our incredible county public schools. These funds will support appropriate salary increases. They'll support more special ed teachers, more para educators, more security staff. They will address the needs that the superintendent outlined in his proposal and the school board recommended in their request to the executive and the council. So we are very thankful that the council has been willing to go along with the superintendent, the executive, the Board of Education, and find a way to fund almost every dollar of their requested increases. So I know the county executive is concerned that he did put forward a very modest revenue increase, a 0.1% increase in the income tax in order to fund our public schools and all of our services. The council found a way to move forward without it, using an approach that he championed, in fact, last year, to divert some of our long-term investments in retiree healthcare into current year retiree healthcare costs. He's long supported a rational approach to our support for our healthcare liability, but he was disappointed to see that they decided to use these one-time funds in order to provide more or less an ongoing increase to the Montgomery County Public Schools. So we will start next year with a question mark with some of that funding. It would have been better, I think, for the council to go along with the income tax increase, the 0.1% rate increase that we only had the authority to move forward with starting on April 1st. The General Assembly did not include this as part of their legislation this year until the very end of session. So the county executive would have led with this when he submitted his budget in March if he had had that flexibility. He did not. He tried to suggest a property tax increase dedicated to the schools just to make sure the schools had that funds when the opportunity for a much fairer, more equitable, progressive approach to taxation, the income tax rate, was put on the table by the General Assembly. He was willing to move forward with it. It looks like the council will not move forward with that. I think that will create some question marks. Just a few minutes ago, we received news that Moody's has downgraded the bond rating for the state of Maryland, which it has been a AAA bond rated state, I think, since 1973. So together with the downgrade of the District of Columbia and the uncertainty created by the federal government, whether it's local employee reductions, funding reductions, tariffs, tax cuts, that because of the uncertainty swirling around the federal government, it would have been good to shore up our finances with an income tax rate increase right now in the most equitable way, which would have resulted in roughly a $100 increase for every $100,000 of taxable income. So, but without that, fortunately, we will still have excess reserves to give us somewhat of a buffer, but we will have, I think, that much more of a difficult task in trying to keep the balanced budget in FY26 and submit a balanced budget in FY27. Now, the good news is it's going to allow the school system to move forward with its investments in a variety of programs, including special education. And the county executive is thrilled that we have one of our outstanding Montgomery County Public School special educators to join us today, Stephanie Golinski, who is a special education teacher at Sherwood High School.
Yep.
Oh, good, because as soon as I started to say Sherwood, I was like, wait, isn't there also a Sherwood Elementary?
There is, but I'm at
Sherwood High School. one of the great high schools in our school system, and quite frankly, in our state and country. Let's be clear about the value of Sherwood. And Stephanie is one of the reasons why the Montgomery County Public Schools have such an outstanding reputation. But we wanted Stephanie to come on. I hope you don't mind me calling you by your first name, to come on. I should be calling you Ms. Golinsky, right? Because of what the kids are going to call you. But to come in and talk a little bit about why this investment in special education is so important at this moment, why it's incredibly important to the young people she deals with day in and day out, and why it's important to every student and every family in this county because of the implications of a strong special education system means for every student in a classroom and in a school and school system. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Stephanie.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Golinsky, and I'm a special education teacher at Sherwood High School. I support inclusion algebra classes. Over the last 12 years, I have taught special education in every grade, K to 9, across settings that span from those that are fully included in the general education setting to students in discrete programs who need support with even the most basic of life skills. I have experienced the significant safety and learning concerns that occur when special education classrooms are understaffed. Special education in Montgomery County is in crisis. I want you to picture a classroom with students who cannot communicate their needs verbally, students who require staff to feed them, students who require staff to change their diapers, students who, when they cannot communicate their needs and wants, will often become overwhelmed and aggressive. Picture 6 students in a classroom, all with this level of need. If you're lucky and fully staffed, you likely have 1 teacher and 2 paraeducators or temporary part-time staff in that classroom. That's a 1-to-2 ratio. That's not bad, right? But what do you do when all of the students are upset and aggressive at once? What do you do when it's lunchtime and everyone needs to be fed? What do you do when 2 students run from the classroom in different directions? What do you do when 1 student is in crisis and requires 2 to 3 staff members to de-escalate? And remember, this is a room that's fully staffed. What if a paraeducator is out sick? What if a teacher has to attend a professional development? Or worse, and more commonly, what if 1 or more of those positions is vacant and has been all year? Notice what wasn't listed here. Anything academic. When special education classrooms are understaffed, the only thing that teachers have the capacity to do is try to keep their students, staff, and themselves safe. You identify the highest level of need or risk and address that first. Now let's picture the other side of the services that I mentioned. Picture an algebra class that has 30 plus students. 10 of those students have learning disabilities and require accommodations such as small group or reducing distractions. 3 or 4 of those students might have an emotional disability and have significantly interfering behaviors. These students may disrupt the entire class regularly, often becoming verbally aggressive and at times physically aggressive. Best case scenario, there is 1 math general education teacher and 1 special educator in the room. What do you do when you have 30 plus students crammed into a room where 3 to 4 students are yelling and screaming at the teacher because they don't understand or they just don't want to be in class? What do you do when your small group has 10 plus kids in it, all needing one-to-one instruction? These are scenes that you will see in special education classrooms across the county. We are in desperate need of support. I love my students. I love their passion, their drive, their curiosity, and their will to learn. And on most days, I love my job. I get to help students find their place in the world. I get to help them take their dreams and make a concrete plan for how to make it happen. And that's why I'm here today. Special educators and students with disabilities should not have to fight every single year to get the resources that we need. We as a county need to invest in education. We need sustainable revenue sources to fund the MCPS budget and not just one-time funding for ongoing needs. Not only do our students deserve this investment in their services, our students are legally entitled to these services under the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Act. Now is the time to make that investment to ensure future budgets do not need to be balanced on the backs of our most vulnerable students. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that and for your work every day. I want to throw it open to any one of the reporters who might have a question specifically for you. I'll come back to handle broad budget questions, But if there's anything first for Stephanie. Ashlyn?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ashlyn. I'm a reporter with Bethesda Today. I cover education. Um, One of the things you talked about was having vacant positions. Not all of the positions in the budget are new, but are you concerned that MCPS might not be able to fill the positions that they are adding?
So this is a question that we've been asked quite a bit throughout this budget process. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that part of the reason we have so many vacancies is because the working conditions are so rough, right? And so all of these extra positions will make the classrooms safer and more tenable, which will mean we'll be able to retain and recruit more people. So I am not concerned about filling the positions because I think that it will dramatically improve the working environment.
Thank you.
And the superintendent has said in a variety of places and talking about the budget, he's quite confident that we'll be able to fill those positions. And I know in some cases, some of the para-educator positions, there are people already on staff who will have the opportunity to go from part-time to full-time
It's also
positions.
folks who have the temporary part-time designation. And so currently those folks are not getting benefits. And so a huge part of this budget is converting those positions into paraeducator positions where they would have benefits and slightly better pay, all of which are things that will attract and retain people.
So, and I think I heard the superintendent say that on an annual basis, the school system brings in more than 1,000 new hires. So actually having a lot of positions to fill is something the school system is quite familiar with and capable of doing. And who knows, in a year where maybe some jurisdictions around the country are going in a different direction with support for education, there will be an opportunity for people who want to come to a community that actually celebrates and puts its money behind its language when it comes to education. Judith.
Hi, Stephanie. I'm Judy Hrues with the Greater Olney newspaper. My sister's a special ed teacher in Pennsylvania, has been for 37 years, I think it is. And she says that part of the challenge is in getting special ed teachers, even if they have the funding, is the paperwork that's required of special education teachers. Does does Maryland have the same challenges? Does the federal government play a role in that? And do you see that challenge?
So the paperwork is always really challenging in special ed. For every student, there's an individualized education plan that is at a minimum like 35 pages long, and then they can be as large as like 100 pages long. So that's always a challenge in special ed. However, if we had the funding and the staffing that we need, then teachers could actually use their planning times to do those things. Currently, because of all of the vacancies and shortages, teachers often have to follow their students to lunch or to their elective classes or things that are happening during their planning time because there just aren't enough humans to keep them safe. And so if teachers were able to have their planning time to do the paperwork, that would definitely lessen the burden. Special ed paperwork is always going to be there. And of course, there's always changes that will need to be made to the special ed paperwork. But I firmly believe that if we have the people and we have the positions and we have people in those positions, that then teachers can utilize their planning time to do this paperwork.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Judy, I know that Stephanie's appearance is going to be the banner headline in Olney News because Sherwood being an important community asset to all of Olney.
When you said Sherwood, I was like, hip, hip, hooray.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me my lead.
Excellent. I'm happy, trying to make Sherwood proud.
Sherwood leading the nation. That's going to be the headline. Okay. Kate Ryan from WTOP.
Unmuting.
Kate.
There you go. I can follow directions. Thank you. Listen, I am coming in late, so I would love to hear more about, again, special education, Sherwood. You have a Sherwood rep there, right, to talk about that. Tell me about why it was so important this year in particular, because when I talked to MCEA yesterday, they were explaining that no, it's a big driver of the budget this year. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can, yeah. So throughout the budget process, well, let me start with this. When the superintendent first put out his budget, seeing that the largest line item aside from staff was special ed made my heart just burst with joy, because usually it's kind of an add-on, or sometimes, a little bit of an afterthought, like, oh, well, we gotta get special ed together. But this line item being so huge really recognizes the importance and the deficit we're at right now. And so the superintendent has been saying throughout this whole budget process that this is an essentials only budget. And right now we have essential needs in special education, because we are, with what we have and what we're doing, we are not necessarily doing what we need to be doing for kids. And the superintendent recognizes that without these positions, without this support, we're going to keep losing special educators, and it's going to be even harder to provide the services that are legally required for our students. So I think this year, because the superintendent is just trying to get us sort of back to base, he saw this extreme need in special education and really focused money there.
Gotcha. And as you've alluded to, is the problem a loss of special ed teachers leaving the field and fewer coming in? And is it also more kids who are now, deemed to need these services? Is it all of the above? One of the,
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So it's very solidly all of the above. We have, over the last several years, special educators will quit mid-year. And if you know anything about a teacher, leaving their students mid-year is incredibly devastating. And so that gives you a little bit of an idea of what conditions must be like for people to leave mid-year. There's also difficulty getting people to come into these positions, because when you're interviewing for a position, let's say you're interviewing for a classroom that supports autism, where you have students who are nonverbal and who need changed and who need all of these things, and you go into that interview and they tell you, oh yeah, we're gonna try and have a para for you, we're gonna try and have a temporary part-time person for you, but really all these responsibilities are just gonna be on you, and then we'll hopefully be able to support, because they don't necessarily have the positions or the budget for it. People are like, no, thank you. I'm not gonna do that. The other big piece of this budget that I think is really, really important, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but there's so many folks right now in special ed staff that are temporary part-time employees, and so they do not receive benefits. And so those individuals are the ones who are, one-on-ones or, assigned to a student who has very significant need. And so we are seeing high turnover in those areas, because you can go work at Starbucks and make about the same and have benefits, and also not to have to change diapers or get hit. And so I think this budget really does a lot to help that and to help all of those compounding problems. I think the other thing you mentioned too was students being identified, right? And so, yeah, there are a lot of kids getting identified. And I feel like what comes to mind for me is, once you know better, do better, right? And so we know now what a lot of these things look like and how different disabilities can present in different ways. And so we're identifying those in kids and saying, okay, this is the services and support that you really need to be successful. And then that is more students, but it's more students who then are getting what they need to be successful in the school environment.
Got you. What I'm going to ask you, what keeps you going? Because it is an incredibly demanding field. You're talking to a former high school teacher, Quince Orchard. You can't hide that cougar pride. But I have to say, I'm very familiar with the need for paras, et cetera. What keeps you going?
So I really believe that every student can be successful. And my little brother has Down syndrome. And so I grew up in the special ed world and seeing what classrooms he was going to be next, and I attending his IEP meetings, things like that. And I could see the immense difference that it had on our family when he had a really good special educator versus when he had, someone who really didn't want to be there. And so I really stay, because I think that the students that I work with now, the students that I've worked with in the past, they deserve the best. And I'm really good at what I do. And I'm not afraid to say it now. I'm really good at what I do. And so I stay because I know that they need people. And it's incredibly hard. My husband is a special educator in the county as well. And so, part of this budget is the compensation piece. And that's really important for us too, because we live in the county also. So yeah.
Gotcha. And then lastly, in terms of, and this may be a question for the superintendent, not you. They said, hey, the county council came up with a plan to cover 99.8% of the budget. And someone asked me this morning, what's the 0.2% that may not be covered? Do we know yet?
So I don't think there's official anything yet, because I think all of this just happened yesterday.
Gotcha. And Stephanie, can you pronounce your last name for me so I say it right on the radio?
Sure, it's Galinsky.
Perfect. Okay. Rich, do you have thoughts on, what we're hearing from this special educator? And Stephanie, again, is this different from years past? Are you detecting a real difference in the way special ed is being regarded?
So yes, in that it's a huge line item in the budget this year. The problems have just been increasing over the course of my entire career. The demands are increasing, and the support for those demands, it just hasn't kept pace. So I think this year, with it being sort of a tipping point, having it be that big of a line item is definitely encouraging to have special ed be such a focus.
So Kate, you probably know, hopefully everyone on this call knows, Mark Elrich is a retired educator. Mark cares deeply about our school system, the children of our school system, the families of our school system. He recognizes the impact that our school system has on our community, our community's economy. So when the superintendent came in and said, look, I'm new here, and let me tell you, we've got a problem when it comes to staffing in special education, and that is impacting the performance of every student. You've got a risk that if you don't do this, these families are going to organize and sue the county. And if you don't get in and actually do it voluntarily, you are potentially going to face the worst case scenario, and that's a lawsuit and a court decision saying you violated the law, you better do this. So we need to step up and do this. We need to do it because it's the morally right thing to do. It's right for these students. It's right for every student in our school system. And it is legally required. And we have for too long suggested, told, promised families and their children that we were going to provide these services, and we haven't done it in a way that is actually delivering the results that those children need and that every child needs to succeed in the school system. And that's why he was willing to put a lot at risk this year. He went out and said, I'm going to identify the funds. I'm going to identify the funding sources. I'm going to put my name on a tax increase proposal in order to do it, because it's the right thing to do, because there is no greater ally of the children and families of our county than Mark Elrich. So fortunately, we've been able to come up with a plan and get the full amount of money that will allow the school system to move forward with this plan to provide these services to our school system, as well as the other improvements, and the fact that he wanted to make sure everyone across the school system was getting a pay raise, because they need to deal with the inflation that everyone is dealing with in order to afford to live here. So he's pleased, thrilled that they've embraced 99.8% of the funding proposal that the executive put forward that was supported by the board and by the superintendent. He does have that question mark moving forward about the sustainability piece, and would have rather have seen the council shore up our revenues in the long term in order to do this. But making progress this year is so incredibly important, to whether it's that one special ed student who is so fortunate to be sitting in front of Stephanie each and every day, or all of those other special ed students in our school system, or in every other child who benefits from each child with a special need getting the services they need in order to perform to their fullest and behave their best.
Let me ask you a follow-up. Does this mean this year that the proposed tax increase, income tax increase, is that dead now? Is that off the table?
I believe the council has decided not to move forward with the property tax, with the income tax increase, that was before the council. So I do think they decided through some other maneuvers to identify funds which Coincidentally, some of you on this phone call heard Mark Elrich talk about OPEB funding. Ginny could probably come in and do a class for us on OPEB. Oh, great, she fell off the call. So, but that we were, he talked about it being the source of funding for the school system last year. The council said, don't do it. We're not going to do it. We don't want to entertain it. I don't want to hear the word OPEB again. And then sure enough, this year, they've decided, the circumstances are special enough that we're going to be moving forward and using the funds that normally we would put aside for future year expenses, we're going to use for our current year retiree healthcare costs in order to make everything balanced and to move forward with this incredibly important initiative of the superintendent.
Got it. Thank you.
No one wanted to look at Stephanie in the grocery store and say, we didn't fund, after she is so persuasive that.
And believe me, I say it in the grocery store too.
Yep.
We're
all afraid of going to Olney if we didn't satisfy Stephanie.
Well, thanks a lot.
Kate, do you have another question?
Well, I'm forgive me again. I'm late on the call. So, in the inimitable words of Jefferson in the musical Hamilton, what did I miss? What other issues did you get into at all? Funding for disasters like the one we've seen out in Allegheny County, and the reason I bring it up is I know that last month FEMA said, "Hey, we're doing away with bricks. We're not going to fund those grants." I know Garrett County had some funding, but Allegheny, as far as I can tell, did not. Any thoughts on that and preparation for disasters like those?
Sure. So before I hit that, Keith, I want to be very respectful of Stephanie. I don't know if someone came in and was like, the kids need you. So if we're done with that, I want to dismiss Stephanie so she can actually get back to her good work, and then we can go on to this and other topics.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for everything you do each and every day and all of your colleagues. So,
Thank you.
So Kate, when it comes to disaster funding, yes, we are very concerned about the funding and the loss of FEMA funds. Everyone in this country should be scared, concerned about what the Trump administration is doing to FEMA, because they are really saying to states and local governments, hey, this is going to be on you. And unless it is a mega disaster, unless it is a hurricane that is going to do multi-state damage, it's really up to you to fund your preparedness, your response, and your recovery. So, it is really, to me, I think, violating a great American tradition that goes back the centuries of a collective response to issues that impact more than just one household. So it's sad that they're going in this direction. Fortunately, we have the resources early in the call, and we posted a picture. We've got 6 of our fire and rescue staff, 2 of our Swiftwater boat teams out in Allegheny County right now, helping with response, because obviously the floodwaters hitting the mountain regions, we all know what that does, is creating more issues for the people of Allegheny County. And we're fortunate to be able to help out and respond and offer that response to our friends and neighbors in Maryland. But that is going to be the future of communities having to go alone. And, I have a chance to work with my colleagues in COG about this, and we're very concerned about the response to emergencies, whether it's responding to a weather emergency, whether it's responding to an incident like the plane crash that occurred at National Airport, that we've got to be able to have the resources to be able to do that. And without that backstop of the federal government to bring people together, to push and support the investment in training and in materials, we'll be going it alone. And maybe, Montgomery County will always have the commitment and the resources to have swiftwater rescue because of our responsibilities on the river and how important recreation is along the Potomac River, that we'll put in those investments. But if other communities don't, are we going to be perpetually helping others out? Are other communities just going to have to be forced to deal with a lack of response and individual risk that no one can really prepare for. So, you can have you and I might have fire extinguishers and escape ladders in our house because we're prepared for that sort of incident, but no one is going to have the ability to prepare for a flood on their own. So it's very troubling to see these changes and to try to understand why they're doing this.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if I can move on to a few other small topics, the county executive was pleased yesterday to be in Annapolis for a bill signing where Governor Moore signed into law two bills that came about as a result of the tragic accident that cost Montgomery County Police Sergeant Pat Kep his two legs. You can see Pat standing in the middle of this photo. Pat is, as hopefully everyone knows by now, or the people on this call, he's been a remarkable person, persevering and overcoming these injuries and getting back on two prosthetic legs and returning to service to the people of Montgomery County and the police department. But the General Assembly, led by Delegate Greg Wims, who's in the picture, Senator Nancy King, they were able to pass two bills that seek to make sure that the drivers, like the person who hit Pat, are never allowed on the road again, that they face the consequences. And ideally, they face consequences of their actions for the types of things that this person was doing before the accident that cost Sergeant Kep his two legs. So if there had been those enhanced penalties, maybe the intervention could have worked to keep him off the street so that accident would never have occurred, because we do not want any of our brave law enforcement, or in fact, any other person, because it could have just as easily have been a bystander who was critically injured that night because of the radical and unsafe driving, that irresponsible driving that this motorist was doing. So again, the county executive is very appreciative to all of the General Assembly for passing this legislation, and again, for Pat's continued work on our with our police department, especially because this is National Police Week. This is the week we commemorate all of our fallen heroes in law enforcement. The county executive, myself, Dr. Stoddard, the entire leadership of the police department, many of the council members, all participated in a variety of events for the county last week out at the public safety headquarters. Beautiful memorial. I don't know if people realize this. The county has a lovely public safety memorial right on the lake that's in front of the public safety headquarters, which of course for many years was the headquarters of the National Geographic Society. So it's a beautiful piece of property. We've created a wonderful memorial with all of the names of our fallen heroes from across our public safety, whether it's the fire department, police department, the park police, our municipal police departments, the sheriff's department, corrections, all of our public safety partners. So it was a lovely event, and we're happy each and every year to bring together the families, descendants of all of the officers who have given their all in their lives for the people of Montgomery County over the last 100 years of the Montgomery County Police Department. So pleased to report that we have been part of a settlement with Monsanto, the international chemical company. We've received an additional $968,000 from the PCB contamination settlement, which has brought our total to $5.2 million. The funds are unrestricted and will be allocated based upon community needs. The monies come from a national class action lawsuit that we were a part of. Many local governments were a part of. Again, we try to have a very proactive legal approach in going after people who have created harm within the community, whether it's on opioids, vaping, social media. We are a part of these nationwide efforts over and over. I want to thank the leadership of the county attorney, whether it's our current county attorney, John Markoffs, our former Lake County attorney, Mark Hansen, the generations of attorneys who have been part of this effort, because we really do try to be a national leader in getting at least and holding companies responsible for the damages and the costs that they cause to our community. And so we're pleased to report that additional money coming in. It's fearful, it's frightening moving forward with all of the reductions that are happening to public health, the research for science research at the federal level. We hate to see these situations where these sorts of chemicals that might have been created for the best of intentions wind up being unleashed and causing problems in the future in our community. So it's why we would say to everyone who's concerned about public health, community safety, that some of these draconian actions that are happening at the federal level by the Trump administration are really risky. And whether we talk about disaster relief or some of these funds, the impact on our communities will be disastrous if Congress lets these things occur. Now, moving on to another topic. On Friday, we will be having a remembrance ceremony outside of the county council where we are installing a new memorial to the lynchings and the victims of lynching that occurred in our own county. And in fact, it's hard to believe with the reputation that Montgomery County has today that Montgomery County and Rockville in particular, and the courthouse was the scene of 2 lynchings of Sidney Randolph and John Diggs Dorsey, who are the victims of racial terror right here in Montgomery County. So we will be having at 10 a.m. on Friday, and you can see the facility, the new installation. We will be having a remembrance ceremony for Mr. Randolph and Mr. Diggs Dorsey. We will also have a special guest attending, Dr. Bobby Legg, who is actually a descendant of one of the perpetrators of the lynching. So a way that this community is coming together where it's the descendants of the victims or the perpetrators of this racial terror coming together and standing up and remembering what existed in our county in the past and what we've done in order to fight that moving forward. So, and of course, this is our effort to continue to make sure that the community knows full and well the history of this community, the good and bad parts of the history of this community, because certainly we don't want to whitewash the past and forget about the terror that occurred right here. We have so much to celebrate as Americans, as Marylanders, as Montgomery County residents, but we also have to make sure we fully understand our past, especially as we're coming up on our 250th anniversary next September 6th. So, but there is so much history to celebrate and so much history to never forget. We hope that you all will take an opportunity to cover this event because I think it's an important note for everyone to realize about the complex history of Rockville, of Montgomery County, and of our nation. So with that, we are so fortunate to have Dr. James Bridgers, Dr. Nina Ashford, leaders of our Department of Health and Human Services, truly a remarkable public service. I'll say it again, there is no local agency like the Department of Health and Human Services in the state of Maryland or a few local governments around the country. We're the only county that operates this in Maryland. We're one of the few in the country. It is a remarkable service. Dr. Bridgers, Dr. Ashford have been great leaders for our community. And quite frankly, when you look at this budget and the budget of the entire Elrich administration, clearly our commitment to social services, human services, public health has been a hallmark of this administration. And when people look back upon the history of this time, I think they will see that the commitment that Mark Elrich led and the support he has received from the county council and so many other people in this community in order to keep up these services has been a tremendous benefit to us. And he's so thrilled that the county council once again embraced almost every dollar of his proposed spending in order to keep people healthy, fed, housed, and well in this community. So with that, Dr. Bridgers, Dr. Ashford, anything to add?
Thank you, Rich, for those kind words. We continue to work very diligently in the community to address those community level needs. As always, we thank you and the county executive for supporting the great work that we do in the community, the much needed work that we do in the community, especially with those federal level threats that always loom on the horizon. So we appreciate the support as always. There's no specific items for me to update the media this week. We will continue to inform the media as things come up, but sometimes no news is good news. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Ashford at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. And again, thank you, Mr. Madalino and County Executive Elrich, for your unwavering support of the department and our work. It is truly appreciated. I just have one brief reminder on behalf of the public health team. And as the days are getting warmer and we're spending more time outside, sun safety is very important. So this would be a great time to find that sunscreen, make sure that it is not expired, and go out and enjoy this beautiful weather. To those that might be having some respiratory symptoms from the allergies, solidarity, hopefully there is some reprieve on the horizon. But it is also helpful to remember that if you are sick and it is not allergies, please still stay home. Wash your hands, cover your face. Thank you.
Follow the county executive's lead. Stay home.
Exactly.
If you're sick, stay home.
Exactly.
You know, even he's able to follow, and God knows he's sometimes hard to follow directions. He was showing a good example for the community. He's sick, he's got a temperature, he's staying at home, staying safe, focusing on himself and the safety of everyone around him. And of course, always remember, while Nina said, great, we're going to have great weather and you want to be outside, remember with the flooding that is occurring upstream, please, if you're going to be near water, stay informed about the conditions, especially if you're planning to recreate anywhere near the Potomac River over the next few days. You want to stay informed because there is going to be lots of water flowing down the Potomac during the next few days. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. God, we've gone a long time. Stephanie was so good. Stephanie got more questions than Francis Collins. I mean, come on, this is... Anyone else? Anyone else? God, I thought for sure Nicole Asbury was going to say, I want to talk more about OPEB because we didn't have enough conversations about it last year. But Dana Monroe has put up her hand.
Oh, trust me, Rich, I'm coming in a second, but I'll let Dana go first.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Rich. We're just trying to follow the budget proposal a little bit and all of the changes. And I wondered if you could, I'm a little behind on this new funding stream, and wondered if you could just talk a little bit about this retirement fund and like what it is exactly that you're pulling from.
Sure. The OPEB is an acronym for Other Post-Employment Benefits. So the county, like most governments, the county provides funding set aside in a trust fund to pay for the retirement costs, pension, other savings for people's retirement for our employees. And like any good government, you're supposed to have money set aside to pay for future retiree healthcare costs. Concept is the employees and the taxpayers of today are benefiting from the services of our employees today. We're the ones that should be paying not only their salaries, but also the future cost of their benefits like retiree pensions, healthcare. So we have two trust funds set aside in order to do that. We have been remarkably prudent as a government to put money over the last 2 decades aside for retiree healthcare. And for the retirees of the Montgomery County government, of Montgomery College, and the Montgomery County Public Schools, we have put aside right now $1.9 billion in order to pay for future healthcare costs. That number, as an aside, has grown by more than double during the Elrich administration. And when Mark came into office, there was $936 million in our combined trust fund for healthcare costs. We, as of December 31st of 2024, that had hit $1,901 million. So a almost $1 billion increase under the prudent leadership of the county executive and those people who have served with him in the county council over the two terms. So this has been a concerted effort by the county government. But as a result of our prudent, responsible actions, we can sit here this year and say, well, the money we were going to put into this trust fund for future retiree costs, we actually have an issue now to pay current retiree and active employee health benefits. It would be better off to use that money for the costs we are experiencing today than to put it into the trust fund in the future, recognizing the $1.9 billion we already have set aside. So the council has listened to the executives call over these many years to be rational about the approach of spending on OPEB, and has decided to use the funds that otherwise would have been put into the savings account for future costs. We're going to use them for our current costs. That roughly equals $25 million for both FY25 and FY26. So creating $50 million worth of money that can be put towards healthcare costs for the school system, relieving them of that, allowing them to shift money that otherwise would have gone to those costs to the rest of the budget, which is how we're able to get to the point where there's going to be a $260 million increase in the school system budget.
Thank you. And is the property tax changed a little from the original proposal, but it's still there as well? Is that right?
Can you?
There was
I want to make sure I get that right.
Wasn't there L. Rich suggested raising the property tax rate a little bit?
So when the county executive submitted his budget in order to meet the goal, and the largest increase in county history for the school system, the request from the superintendent and the school board, that the only way we were able to do that, the county executive proposed at that point on March 14th, a 3.5 cent increase in the property tax that's dedicated to the public schools. A few weeks later, the General Assembly decided to provide county governments in Maryland the ability to raise their maximum, to have a higher maximum level of the income tax. Under current state law, every county is capped at a 3.2% income tax rate. Almost every county is at 3.2%. It's a bit of a last minute surprise. The General Assembly said you could go to 3.3%. So the county executive said, hey, you know what? I would much rather do the income tax if I could have, I would have proposed the income tax and not a property tax. It is a fairer, more progressive, equitable way to move forward with taxation. So he put that on the table in order to have the resources necessary to move forward with the school system budget, recognizing the council when he suggested using OPEB funds last year, the council was like, no, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want you to talk about it anymore. Nicole is my witness to that. But as a result, he said, this is a way to make sure we have the money this year and moving forward. The council has decided to come back to using the OPEB dollars for the current year spending for FY26. I know the county executive is pleased that we're going to have the funds to meet the superintendent and school board's goals, the ones that he has supported from the very beginning. But there does leave us with a question mark about what happens in FY27. This time next year, hopefully everything will be smooth and we can move forward. But I think he would have appreciated it and felt better for the long term if the council had gone along with his suggestion with the income tax to make sure we were in the strongest possible position moving forward with our reserves and our ability to cover all of our commitments, whether it's to our school system, our social services, public safety, everything that we're trying to do in order to keep a strong, healthy, growing Montgomery County.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Judy has her hand back up. What other wonderful things can I say about Sherwood and Albany?
So should we expect people to grumble about taking the money out of those funds that will be used for future needs as
Well-
opposed to giving the money to, essentially special education needs right now? I mean, whenever you shift money like that, the people who might potentially get that money will say, hey, what about us? What if I'm going to be in that category very soon? I might need that money. Don't take my money. Should we
Well,
be expecting that?
I don't think you should. Um, I don't think they should, but because, we have for the entirety of as long as we have provided healthcare benefits to our retirees over these many decades, we have always done it through the annual appropriation. So no retiree, whether it's our retiree from the county government or from the school system, should be concerned like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to have my healthcare costs paid. That is not the case whatsoever. We will continue to make that payment. And remember the structure of this trust fund, unlike the pension trust fund, where we're putting money aside, and in the end of the day, each individual employee gets a check saying, on an ongoing basis, this is your pension. You use it for what you want and what you need. When it comes to the healthcare costs, we pay the bills. So it won't be going to Nicole to go pay healthcare. It will be flowing back to the county government. It's the sole beneficiary of the trust fund in order to pay for those costs, the reimburse for the costs that are occurring. So no retiree should be afraid of this. I would reiterate the $1.9 billion that we have already set aside that continues to grow, is actively invested and grows each and every year. Therefore, this is, there might be a few people who grumble about intergenerational equity, and that you are using a one-time source of money for an ongoing expense. It does create that question mark, but no retiree should be nervous about their health care being paid for, and this is a sensible approach.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Nicole.
Hi. Okay, I have two questions for you.
Uh-oh.
The first one, I really want to speak a little bit about the uncertainty and unpredictability we've had with this budget season, both at the state and federal level. Just as a starting point, one of the things that happened in March that I know you know about is the Trump administration announcing that they weren't going to reimburse school systems for ESSER funding. Has the school system talked, through this budget season, have they talked to county government about how that's affecting them? And has that influenced a lot of the budget being set and moving forward since March?
So I have to say, it has been a hallmark of the Montgomery County government, whether it's the county government, the school system, the college. We have all been diligent at spending the ESSER, all of our COVID related dollars, whether it's the ESSER, what was that, elementary, secondary school emergency response funds, whatever. All of the COVID related dollars that flowed from the federal government to us, we have spent, we put back into the community. So, when it comes to when they identified here as unreported, and clearly that's part of the issues, is it isn't necessarily from a Maryland standpoint, isn't necessarily unspent. It's maybe the right documentation wasn't provided to the U.S. Department of Education showing that it had been spent. When it comes to the Montgomery County Public Schools, we have spent all of the hundreds of millions of dollars that have come in. There might be like $2 to $4 million that could potentially have not been processed yet, but for the hundreds of millions of dollars that flowed to Montgomery County, we have been diligent about following the rules, spending the money as intended, filing the reports. Dr. Bridgers and his colleagues and HHS, who were a prime beneficiary of these funds, have been excellent at diligently working and spending that money and reporting to the federal government how we spent every single dollar. And let me tell you, we had to do a ton of reporting and continue to do reporting. But the Montgomery County government, with the expectation of County Executive Elrich, council members, we have been very diligent at doing this work, spending it wisely, investing in our community, and filling out every report and going after every extra penny of federal funds that we could. So I don't think, while this is a question mark for the state of Maryland, this has not yet hit or been an issue for the Montgomery County Public Schools. We're very hopeful that the state government isn't going to say, here are a handful of jurisdictions that maybe did not spend their money, but we're going to spread the pain over everybody. So we haven't heard that. Hopefully people will look and say, the Montgomery County Public Schools, not an issue when it comes to this.
And then the other piece to all of this that I wanted to ask about is if just you can speak to generally how much has had to sort of transition around because of the unpredictability we've had both at the state and federal level this budget cycle.
We are very fortunate in Montgomery County. We in Maryland, the structure of county finances has us overwhelmingly dependent upon our residents. So unlike our neighbors in the District of Columbia or Northern Virginia, where they get money, I mean, the district is a single entity, so they collect all of the taxes. So they get the sales tax. They have a hugely bifurcated property tax system where they charge 85 cents on residents and up to $1.89 on valuable properties, office commercial properties in the district. So they have a huge amount of exposure to business activity and to offices, especially in that downtown core. So in Northern Virginia, they get 1.8 cents of the 6-cent Virginia sales tax. They have differential rated rates of an enormous amount in Arlington and Fairfax. They have greater exposure to the office market than we do at this point. We have the solid base of the income tax and the property tax. 80% of our property tax is residential property. Those values have continued to hold up quite well. There has been enormous growth over the last several years in values. There's no sign that that's going to change, that many of the offices, should the federal government decide to sell off office buildings, in many cases, those are office buildings that are already owned by the federal government and not taxed. So, that we don't, even if they close those buildings, that is not a property tax loss to us. Now, on the income tax, this is where, Montgomery County is fortunate to have people of every income classification, including, some of the wealthiest people on the planet live in Montgomery County. And so that diverse income tax base provides a level of stability to our revenues that many other places around the country and many local governments do not have. No local income tax in Northern Virginia. So they don't benefit from the stability that comes with the income tax. Now, all that being said, we get the income tax that from the state at 10 distributions through the year that reflect different points of the year. We don't collect the income tax. We get very little information about our taxpayers. We don't have individual information about any taxpayer in Montgomery County, income taxpayer in Montgomery County. We get it all in the aggregate. So, as of right now, all of our income tax distributions from the state have been on target or actually a little bit ahead. So there are lots of reasons, because we have lots of people in this community who are not employed by the federal government, whose income does not get impacted by the federal government, including, several billionaires who obviously will not see the direct impact of federal cutbacks. Now, we trigger a global economic downturn. Who knows what happens, and hopefully that won't occur. But that same sort of instability that we have seen at the federal level and the state level has not flowed to us, and there are many reasons why it won't, including the fact that because we are traditionally a wealthy jurisdiction, many of these wealth-adjusted formulas at the federal or state level don't mean there's big money coming to us. So there are other parts of the state and nation that have far more exposure to the loss of federal funds than we do. So the taxpayers, residents, business leaders of our county should feel quite comfortable about the fiscal health, the prudent financial management of the Elrich administration, the Leggett administration, the Duncan administration. I mean, this is an intergenerational effort to keep Montgomery County quite strong. We are recognized consistently for our prudent financial policies and our strong management team, whether it's the Elrich administration or prior administrations, has been a hallmark of Montgomery County. So what people are reading about nationally, what people are reading about at the state or in other local governments don't necessarily flow to us.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it.
Okay. Dana, one last question.
I wanted to see if you could talk a little about the longevity of this solution, because it seems like the OPEB money and pulling it from there, if it's like a one-time thing, it's one-time money, but these special ed teachers will hopefully be there, right, years and years and need to get their salaries paid. All these people laid off from the federal government whose income tax might be different now, may still be unemployed. The state may still continue to shift. Like, how do we understand like this sort of temporary, I guess, stopgap solution to this problem that seems like it may last, years?
Sure. I think it's humorous that you started the question by saying, can you speak briefly? Because God knows it's very hard for me to speak briefly. So just ask any of my relatives.
Speak at length.
So you could see Dr. Bridgers is slowly. So, I mean, yes, there's one of the challenges that this action does create for the future is when we start FY27, which of course is the budget the county executive has to release next March for, passage this time next year for July 1st of 2026. That first $50 million is going to have to go to the school system. So, right. We're starting from behind. So even if things are in a case where it's like, all right, we can't afford to do anything more, we need a same services budget. Mm-hmm. That means in order to have that same services, we're going to have to find $50 million more for the school system moving forward. So it does create that challenge, which is why the county executive, would have preferred the council use, and move forward with the income tax increase, even if it had been for January 1st, 2026, so that we had that buffer and those revenues ability set aside, ready to start from scratch to fill that hole. So that is a question mark, but year in and year out, we have been fortunate that revenues have continued to go up because of the growth agenda that this county has long had, that County Executive Elrich has continued along, that has made sure that we've been able to afford our commitment to great public services, whether it's public schools, public safety, social services, whatever it is, we are able to continue to make that investment. So that is the challenge we will all have as administrators, is trying to figure out from the start. We've got to figure out where that $50 million comes from at the very beginning, with other challenges that we might have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have been given the hook and told really to stop because we can't afford the internet connection for any longer. So just kidding. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for being here. Dr. Ashford, Dr. Bridgers for their continued work, Stephanie Galinsky for her commitment to the children of our schools of Sherwood every day, to all of the special educators, teachers who make the Montgomery County Public Schools a great place. And I want to wish the Washington Capitals good luck. I can't believe they're in this situation, but hopefully they will be winning sometime soon. So, because, Dr. Bridgers enjoyed the Commanders run in the playoffs. I deserve the same thing this year, even though I did enjoy the Commanders immensely. Come on, this is the team. So with that, thank you all very much. Stay safe. Remember, turn around, don't drown. Watch for weather conditions. Sign up for Alert Montgomery and have a wonderful day.